Hello and welcome to the Profitable Coach podcast. I'm your host, Kimberly Rich, head coach at Transformation Academy. From seasoned experts sharing their hard-earned wisdom to rising stars navigating their journey, every episode uncovers the stories, strategies, and lessons behind what it takes to create massive impact and income as a coach. This show is brought to you by Transformation Academy and the Impact Coaching Collective. If you're ready to be inspired, take action, and build the coaching business of your dreams, well, then you are in the right place. Let's dive in. Welcome back to episode number 70 of the Profitable Coach podcast. Today, my guest is motivational speaker, transformational coach, Manny Borja Jr. I love this conversation so much today, and as you listen, you'll be able to tell just how excited both Manny and I get, because it's like we've found a kindred spirit. And it's really important when you are in the world of entrepreneurship, when you are pouring your heart and soul, your blood, sweat, and tears into something that you care about, to surround yourself with people who get it and people who see the world the way that you do and can validate some of these questions that you've had along your own healing journey. And that is exactly what today's conversation is. So I won't give away too much more about my dialogue with Manny, but just know that it is a juicy one. And if you are also feeling called to connect deeper and find a community of like-minded souls, then I encourage you to head over to theprofitablecoach.com/070, where you can get access to all the different resources that we talk about in today's conversation, but also access to a discount for the Impact Coaching Collective community. I won't delay you anymore. I'm going to go ahead and bring Manny onto the show. Without further ado, please welcome Manny Borja Jr. Welcome back to the Profitable Coach podcast. I am excited to have with me today my new friend, Manny Borja Jr. Manny, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you, Kimberly, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so I love this conversation already because Manny and I were connecting a little bit offline, and I'm reminded of why I asked Manny to come on the show. And that is, he just has this energy of warmth, of welcoming. And that's actually how we met, was at a business conference recently. And I was kind of in my little introverted bubble, not really feeling like networking. And Manny came up to me and was just like, "Hi, let's chat." And I was like, "Thank you, actually. This is so nice. I forgot. It feels really good to connect with other humans." So I hope everyone who's listening to the show can feel that from Manny. And I just want to acknowledge you for that, Manny.
Well, thank you. That's really kind of you. Yeah, it wasn't hard to come up to you. You're a beautiful person. And as soon as you said hi, I was like, yeah, she's great. So, and then I found out more about what you do, and I thought, let's be friends.
Yeah, exactly. So we've talked a little bit about who the listeners are of this show, and I want to take people back who are not familiar with you yet. You've been doing personal growth and mentorship and coaching for a long time. So what was the catalyst? Like, how did you even find this crazy world that we live in?
Well, it's funny. I grew up in a household of entrepreneurs. My father was a business owner, contractor. I don't think I ever saw him working, so to speak, for someone else, as they would say, right? So long hours, not seeing him much due to his work and all the things that he did. And I think he kind of spoke that into my life. I think he spoke like big dreams, big visions, and purpose and impact, and a lot of those things that we kind of tend to go to like these conferences for, as we were at. And so I kind of, had an edge with the father, who was pretty ambitious himself. And when I turned 19, this was my very first venture into the entrepreneurship world. I was actually being prepped at 16, believe it or not. I was a telemarketer for a real estate agent. And I was getting loan applications over the phone at 16. So I learned marketing very early, but 19 years old, I was really into health and fitness, and I was hounded down by a gentleman named Adam Schaefer. Actually, he's the host and co-owner of Mind Pump Media. Many listeners who are into health and wellness may recognize the name. I was working out at his gym, 24 Hour Fitness, and he used to say, "Hey, when you turn 18, I want you to come work for me." So I turned 18, and I worked for him for a little bit, and then a few months later, by the time I was 19, I was doing my own training business. So that was the start of everything. as far as how I got into business and how I found myself in the world of helping other people with business was I had built a fairly successful business in my own right in health and wellness and fitness and personal training. And so not only were people coming up to me asking me for advice for, how did you get fit, or how did you help a lot of people get in shape? But now it was like, how did you build a fairly successful business in your early 20s? And so that's how it started. And then I started realizing, like, wait, if I do some market research, I can help people across different industries. It's not that hard. Marketing and sales is really A, B, C, D, and then, help them implement that into their industry, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. So I know that both from our conversations and from, casual stalking on the internet, that there are some other really important pillars in how you help people around
Yeah.
fulfillment and peace and like self-love and just having a sense of a fulfilling life. So how do you
Yeah.
weave all of these together in the work that you do?
I'm a big person when it comes to like defining words properly for, each individual. I think when I was in my 20s, and I'm going to give you some long-winded answers, so feel free
Please.
to come in at any time. But when I was in my early 20s, I had built the body that I always wanted. I had built, you know, I had generated, some pretty good revenue in that business in my early 20s. I tasted a good amount of money very early on through my own efforts, and I was also married at the time. And then I ended up having my daughter. And what I came to learn, Kimberly, was through all of that, I was still stressed out. I was like kind of trying to balance out like my personal life and my business life. And it just was like there was so much trauma and pain that I was dealing with that I was not aware of, that eventually it led to my demise. And I came to the
Mm.
realization, like, wait a minute, if I'm not well here and here, I can't even succeed in business. There is no business without Manny being great. And so it only lasted for so long. And so when you look at the
Mm.
numbers where people say, well, most businesses last at most 10 years, right? You think about people who, and oftentimes it's like failure to adapt to the market, or failure to this and that. I came to realize, like, well, there's a missing component no one's talking about, and that is failure to learn how to manage our emotions and learn to how to find peace and joy. And what happens when we're low? Can you still, you can still show up, but it's only going to be a matter of time until you don't want to show up and you got to disappear from the world. And, you know, to each their own. But that's kind of, you know, why I got into the whole realm of, hey, we really got to find ways to find inner peace, find joy, find purpose, find fulfillment within yourself. And that way you're not only building your business, but you're building yourself along the way to hold the capacity, or to have the capacity to be able to succeed. So that was kind of why I got into it. I'm a guy who likes to get to the root issues, and that's how I helped myself get back off of the ground, so to speak, and thriving once again in my life.
I can't help but think of the book The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. Have you ever read it?
Mm-mm,
Oh,
not
it's
read it.
so good. Okay, we'll definitely link that up in the show notes for everyone. But Gay talks about this concept of upper limiting, and we all have this like emotional thermostat that we're used to, and we have similarly a financial thermostat where we tend to believe about ourselves that we exist in a very specific range. And so when we experience success, financial success, emotional success that exceeds our norm, our thermostat, then we can't help but like recalibrate back down, if you will, to
Mm,
where
mm,
we assume we should be. And,
mm,
he gives the example of you're walking down the street, you're having a great day. And then all of a sudden you just think about something that makes you mad or sad. And then you
mm,
go down that rabbit hole. And it's like, why? Why did we just upper limit, like create a ceiling for our joy and
mm,
have to bring it back down? So I think of
mm,
this because it's like your body hadn't yet calibrated to what success can feel like, and how to
Mm.
have that and joy at the same time, like how to have it all. I think a lot of
Yeah.
people aren't learned yet on how to have and hold it all, whatever it all looks like for them. So
Right.
highly recommend that book.
Good points. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So when you decided that pouring into yourself and finding a sense of peace and fulfillment and purpose were equally as important as the dollars that were coming into your bank account or the muscles that were forming on your arms,
Yeah.
how did
Yeah.
you shift the training into what you would now consider coaching? What did that transition look like?
Yeah. So, and that's funny you said, and I'll try not to get off topic, but it's funny you said when I learned that it was equally important. Yeah, I don't take away from the importance of like making money and also having muscles or being physically fit, feeling confident in your body and having energy. Um, I don't, I, for me, I just realized like when I had anxiety so bad, it was not even a matter of equal anymore. It was like, I'd rather be able to breathe than to have $1 billion. So at that point, it was like not just equal. It was like, no, I need peace. That is the biggest thing I crave. Even beyond love, I need peace. Then comes love and such, right? But to go back to your
So true.
question, yeah, to go back to your question, I think you said, how did I kind of like put that into a business, right? Or how did that become a part of my coaching?
Yeah.
Um,
How did you transition into coaching?
okay. Into coaching people on the topic of peace, right? Is
Yeah,
that
on
what you meant?
mental and emotional well-being outside of just physical fitness.
It was the biggest problem that I would come across in conversations with high performers and entrepreneurs. It was like this thing that, everybody thought like, I'm so, I'm succeeding, I'm business and thriving. And like, I got to sacrifice like my mental, I got to sacrifice like my peace. Like, I don't have time, or I'm just so busy that I don't have time for myself. I don't have time for that component. And I thought to myself, if you don't make time, you will make time. Like you will have time. The
Yeah.
body, God, the universe, it will, because it's my belief and my understanding. I think that the world, God, is always looking to balance things out. And I think that it's like sometimes, when people say like if you don't make time for your health now, like later, you know, you'll have no choice, right?
Mhm.
Because you're going to be sick and such.
Yeah.
So people don't really understand that, hey, if you don't make the time to treat your mental health, your spiritual health, your emotional health, if you don't take care of that now, you will eventually have no choice. Otherwise, we may feel like we're just going to die, right? So
Yeah.
it was just a huge problem. And especially when I was coaching business clients, I used to actually run marketing and media company. I saw a lot of the failure come back to personal issues. It was always like not the strategies that were in place. It was like something that came to really destroy them as a person. And that's why I hadn't heard from them in 3 weeks. It had nothing to
Yeah.
do with anything else. And so there was few people who can like, I don't want to be offensive, but let me just be as honest as I can. There's a few people that they go home and they pound a bottle of wine or they do some drugs or whatever that may be, and then they show up and they perform and they're ambitious and they're really chasing the dollar and they can just put all their problems to the side. But I
Yeah.
thought like, well, not only do I think you should be able to perform, but I think you should also be able to come to work, go into your creative space feeling really good. I think that it's possible to really have it all. Like, can I have peace and a life of purpose and fulfillment doing my business, scaling big dollars? Absolutely. And I figured out a
Yeah.
method to help busy people do that, if that makes sense.
Totally. And I think it's so important more now than ever because there's this like really heightened sense of hustle and do, and also like not having your own attention be within your control in many cases. You open your phone,
Hmm.
it's immediately being commandeered by an app, some sort of dopamine rush, etc. And so I
Yeah.
think that it's like imperative now. And I can't help but think of the quote from the conference that we were at, work on yourself harder than you work on your business. this has just been
It's so
ringing in
good.
my mind. It's like you
Yeah.
have to make time to create a regulated nervous system, to create a feeling of expansiveness, of limitlessness, of receptivity. Because if you're in a state of contraction while you're trying to create and do, yeah, you might make it work, but like at what cost and for how long?
Right. Yeah. Actually, when I was doing things, to touch up on what you're saying, Kimberly, like when I was in my 20s, one of the biggest things I came to realize was like the more money I made, the more I had to spend to cope with my pain. you
Mm.
know, I actually gambled away $50,000 in 3 years playing blackjack in Vegas in my 20s. And so I figured a lot of people, that was another reason that I got into figuring out how to find peace and joy and happiness, is because I was like, wait a minute, the more money I make, the more money I lose because I have to escape my reality. I'm so stressed that I
Mm.
want to go play, and now all my money's gone, right? And so that was another reason why I was like, this makes zero sense. The more money I make, the more I got to spend to make myself feel better. And it just was like a hamster wheel.
Yeah. So, who or what were the resources, the mentors that you turned to along your journey?
Um, I came from a very religious space, and this is a whole nother conversation one day. And I left that space approximately 3.5 years or 3 years ago.
Hmm.
Believe it or not, I was actually a pretty big minister in the Christian, charismatic, Pentecostal, non-denominational movement, if you would. Like I was a preacher and a speaker for that cause. But um, I was divinely guided to a lot of the tools in the personal development space. And so there's been a variety of people that I've learned from afar, that I've
Hmm.
added things to my practice that have come up that have helped me come up with the method that I come up with today. But like some of my favorite teachers, who really helped me with inner peace in the journey? Wayne Dyer.
Mm.
Wayne Dyer, he was one of my favorite influences. I've read several of his books. I've listened to
Love
several
Wayne Dyer.
videos of what he talks about. Wayne Dyer. Let me see who else. Who else in the later half? I'm trying to think. To some degree, and because Tony Robbins is not he's not a peace guy as much as he is a high energy guy, right? But his
Anti-suffering.
Yeah, anti-suffering. Like his perspective on shifting, your state, and understanding that we as human beings don't value things as much as we do the emotions that we believe it brings us, right?
Totally.
So there's just been a little bit of everybody in that space. I turn to learn from anyone and anything I can to add to it. But yeah, in the beginning, it was definitely I had a divine experience that led me to the beginning of these tools. Which, if you're interested in that, we can talk more as well.
I would love to know more. Yeah, because one of the things that I noticed about you both in person and then online afterwards is you do still speak about your faith and
Hmm.
God. And so I'd love to hear like what has been your evolution there, and also how um that shift, that transition plays
Yeah,
into how you coach.
it's huge. It's everything. I talk a lot about like mind, body, and spirit.
Mm.
Right, the three components of a human being that we're aware of, that we can communicate in such a way that helps us to understand ourselves. Because for me, peace can be found through the mind, in the spirit, and in the body. Sometimes people think that like my nervous system is regulated, but their spirit doesn't have peace still. They
Mm.
feel better physically. They know they're not as chaotic. Maybe their hormones are more balanced, but there's still something missing inside. They still have these questions. There's no tangible presence of what I call God in
Yeah,
their spirit, right? And so there's that component. But then you meet a lot of religious people who claim to have a connection to God, but their minds are just absolutely chaotic, and that's because of the way they've been programmed and their
mm,
viewpoints and their perspective, right? And then there's people who have the mind side. They program their mind for peace and success, and for the most part they don't have too many questions, but still there's those crossing points that affect our emotions and feelings. So I like to attack it on all three levels. But As far as the spirit and God goes, God is everything to me. My life, my whole life has been centered around seeking God, finding truth. I mean, obsessively, not just through research and my studies, but also through my prayer and seeking time. I mean, I can't tell you how many hours I prayed in my life and fasted and did crazy things. And so what I want to say is, like, people see me wear a cross on my neck. I want to be very clear because this is really intriguing to people. Today, my faith in God, I still wear a cross because I have a connection to Jesus. When I say Jesus, I mean this in the most loving way, but I don't really resonate with the mass majority of religion that talks about Jesus. Okay. My experience with Christ has been wonderful. And it's been so beautiful and loving. I even get kind of want to start crying right now just thinking about it. But it's like, if people knew this God the way that I did, they would never reject it, because it's so much love. It's so much peace. It's so much joy. And like, if you felt good from my energy, I would have to credit my connection to God. It's like I used to be what we would call a conduit, which we all are. But I think the more sensitive and aware you are to your connection, the more you're able to exude that into the world, right? And so God is everything to me. And so when I left the religious space, I was scared. It was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I made a name for myself and the whole world knows me to be this person over here. But I heard a voice inside when I was struggling with anxiety and depression. The anxiety was so great, I couldn't breathe. This was that time frame about 3 years ago. And this was after being in church. Okay.
Yeah.
And after being in the religious scene, there was still brokenness and stuff missing inside. And I remember I was in my family's garage, and it was a hot summer night and I couldn't breathe. And I just felt so like strongly, like I have to get in a body of water. I have to like get in water. I don't know. I feel like my soul needs water or something. So I like ran into, like, it was dark at nighttime. It was stars everywhere. It was late. I jumped a fence. Okay. And I jumped into a hot tub with no lights on. And it was a community hot tub. Okay. Just for the viewers, I didn't jump in someone's backyard. Okay. It was a community hot tub. And I sat there. Okay, this is crazy. Okay, I sat down.
I love this story.
And I laid back. Thank you. I appreciate it. I laid back and I laid down, and the water was covering my ears to like right here, right? I'm just laying back in the water. And I'm like sitting there in my pain. But for a moment, everything got still. And I could just hear my breathing. And I could see my breath in the starry sky. And I heard a voice say, study the breath. Study the breath. And I was like, study the breath? But I knew it had to be God. Like, it was so strong. And I got out of the water and I went back home and I dove into breath, but I started in the Bible because that's what I was familiar with, right? And I was scared, but finally it dawned on me that breath is talked all throughout the Bible. We just don't use the word. And what is that word? Spirit.
Spirit.
The word, spirit, right? So spirit means ruach in Hebrew, which is the breath of God. And all throughout the Bible, because I used to be a minister and I understood the Bible, I made all the connections. I was like, wait a minute. God breathed into the nostrils of man. The Spirit of God hovered over the earth. The breath of God hovered over the waters, over the dark. And then I started going into the New Testament, and I was like, wait a minute. Jesus breathed into the nostrils of his disciples and said, receive the Holy Spirit, receive the holy breath of God. And then I was like, oh my gosh, the Holy Spirit came like a mighty rushing wind, like the breath of God, the breath of God. I was like, why are we talking about the breath in church? I was like, why are we talking about breathing? Right. And so from there, I got kind of more bold, and I was like, let me dive into the science behind breathing and how that affects how we think and feel. And came across Wim Hof, who, changed the world with his breath work and cold plunging. And his story is incredible. If you haven't had a chance to listen to his story, but he literally, his wife, and she passed, and he was in depression, and he finally found the cold, and then eventually he learned breath work, and now he's always happy, right? At least it seems. And
Yeah.
but the list goes on. And so I started studying the breath, and I started studying it both from the kind of faith perspective and also over here. And so that's how the journey began. I got really deep into breath work, and it is a part of what I teach, but I also incorporate the frequency or the presence of God in it, to combine that practice. So there's a lot of things that I do to help people not only experience more peace on the physical, but also in the spiritual and the mental as well, right? So anyway, that's how it started. And then God just kept divinely guiding my steps into reprogramming the subconscious mind, and kind of deepening me in these areas that would help aid what I was already doing as far as, connecting people to God. So I hope I answered your question, but that's what happened.
I love this story. So there's so many questions that I have as a follow-up. One is,
Sure.
what do you think shifted in you that allowed this new relationship with Christ to alleviate your anxiety and to give you the courage to leave the church or the religion, or the, however you want to refer to it? What
Yeah.
shifted about your relationship with Christ that hadn't existed when you were still at the church?
Well, I think, this is very interesting because my whole life I really didn't fit in with the church anyhow. I knew I was different, and everyone kind of knew I was different, but it was like, shh, he's using the same language. And, they're like, this guy sounds like us, but is he,
Yeah.
so, there's this whole idea of predestined to be here, and you are what you are, right? But in my awakening to something new, and Jesus being different, I have so many reasons I can answer that question a ton of ways. And that's what's crazy about it. I think listeners who can kind of relate to that have so many reasons themselves. But I think the number one thing I can say is it just didn't work. I don't know what else to say. You were going to church. We have this Jesus. We read about peace, love, joy, purpose, and fulfillment. But the fruit of that spirit that's within the structure, it doesn't seem to match what you are told. It's like the number one fruit I was looking for was peace. And so when you're connected to God, shouldn't you have peace in your life? And not only as a church goer, but as a minister and having prayed for thousands and thousands of people, it was like, these are some of the least peaceful people I've ever met. I'm just being really honest, but
Totally.
this is the thing.
I appreciate it.
It wasn't just them. It was me. It was me too. That's the honest truth. It was like, I'm struggling with depression and anxiety. My prayers don't really get answered. Sometimes they do. I don't I'm suffering. The life of a Christian in the beginning is really good and really happy and really blessed, but keep traveling down the path, and eventually you hit suffering like you've never seen before. You get squeezed, and then you're like, wait a minute, my faith is in question. And people allow the programming that they've had to keep them going into those cycles. But it was the way God showed me was when I finally got to the point of my internal suffering where I was really done. I told God probably a million times before I told him this again, but I probably told him a million times, I am so tired and I'm done. I'm sick and tired. I'm done. I can't, right? I'm on my bed. I'm not even praying in the most holiest religious way. I'm just I'm dead, God, just kill me now, And, but in that, nothing ever changed because I wasn't done. I wasn't ready yet. God knew I wasn't ready to give up my paradigms. He knew that I had to be convinced over and over and over that the system that I was not only following, but preaching and teaching, it doesn't work. it doesn't work for what I was looking for in my life.
Yeah.
Maybe other people, it does work for them. But for the
Yeah.
most part, like I said, my experience, it didn't work for me, and it didn't work for a lot of people that I helped. And you have to be honest about it, you know, if you're going to be. So finally I said, God, no, I really am done. And I think when I finally said, no, I really am done, that's when everything changed. Like, you're ready for change when it actually happens. And so that's what shifted. And Christ was with me the whole way. And it was like, as he was guiding me, I was like, God, you know, I kind of tried to keep 1 foot in, 1 foot out, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. It was like a slow process of like, okay, I'm completely out, you know, and to learn, like, have my moments the whole way through, like God showing up in different ways in my life to really confirm that he's like been with me on this path and that he was guiding me on this path. You know how many Christians, including my own family members, told me I was just crazy and that I was wrong and that I was going off the path. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, for sure.
Like,
yeah.
Right. But time and time again, like, God shows up to prove I'm not wrong, you know, and the fruit of my life displays that first internally. I'm not even talking about external blessings here, but thank you, Lord, for all that, you know, but it shows in my life. And so I have so much confidence because of peace. Does that make sense? So,
yeah. So what is the new, let's just say I'm going to spitball here. The old relationship, the old system looked like praying a certain way, reading the Bible a certain amount, going to church a certain amount, hanging out with certain people. What does the new way look like? Because we're still using a lot of the same words.
Yep. Well,
I love this conversation, by the way.
I love this conversation too. I feel like, Kimberly, we're gonna have more conversations even off the podcast. But
we got a lot to talk about.
I think we got a lot to talk about, and I hope the viewers are enjoying this too. But you know, the new way. First off, you're right. It's like, what's the old way? It's like, okay, go to church, yeah, right, 3 times a week if you want, at least on Sundays. Don't miss Easter. Okay, you know, read your Bible, pray, fast, worship God. Get into a life group, find Christian friends, don't be unequally yoked. Also, don't sin, live a righteous, holy life. Okay. And just do your best to be a good person. And if you fail, then, you know, repent and confess to a very unhealthy, unhealed group of people who will spill your business. Sorry, fam. And then ruin your life, right? No. And then that's a whole nother topic. But and then you should have the fruit of God's Spirit, and you should be happy, and life should be fairly good. Now, it doesn't promise without trials and tribulations, but for the most part, like, you should be pleasing God. And so that's the old way. There are some things from the old way that do work. I won't dismiss that. If that weren't true, I think people wouldn't be practicing them, right? But it's not just about doing it the old way. It's about how you show up. So like when I say prayer, I used to pray and scream the rooftops down or beg God for mercy and forgiveness all the time because I was always accidentally sinning, right? And also, I would also say on top of that, I was like begging God for blessings, like, and trying to do his work and his will, but like, how come there was no money to ever supply it? You know, like that, like there was, or like begging God for miracles and healing. So that was the old way. The new way is, I am not in a state of fear or feeling so far from God. I have this greater revelation, which continues to grow, of like my oneness to Christ, like my oneness to God in all things, including Kimberly, like you and I, and like seeing God in the beauty in all things, even the hard things, as hard as that can be. But you come to this place of acceptance and you shift your state into oneness and gratitude. And when you come to God, which is within you and even above you and beyond you, wherever you want to go, you come into a place of gratitude and you shift your state into true humility. And it's not like humility in a sense of like, I'm unworthy. It's humility in the sense of like, man, God, you love me. Like I'm like amazed at your love. Here comes the tear. Sorry. I'm like amazed. I'm amazed at your love. I'm amazed at how good you are to me. And even when things are seemingly not the way I thought I wanted, I now see stuff from a place of gratitude. Okay. So that's one. So a total shift, right?
Yeah.
Always believing that God is for me, that God isn't against me because I made some mistake, or God is dissatisfied with me because of that. And I'm not going to say that God isn't dissatisfied with people who do wrong to others. Okay. I'm not going to go as far as that. But when you have a right heart posture and you want to connect, that's important. So that was one
Yeah.
way. The other way is like, yeah, I'm not like shouting from the rooftops anymore, like as if God can't hear me. I understand he can hear my thoughts. And so really connecting my thoughts and my heart, right? Coming from the place of the heart and coming from the place of my thoughts, and understanding I'm a co-creator with God in my reality. That's another thing. And I don't really read the Bible, but if I do, I meditate on scriptures that are positive and uplifting, because whatever you feed your mind is eventually going to be your truth. And so I program my mind with all kinds of fear growing up, all kinds of like, there are scriptures that really promote, and probably not even translated properly. And you're going to want to have a conversation about this too one day, but probably not translated properly. And if they're not translated properly, now you got like 30,000 interpretations of what it means. But like shifting from like the negative side of things to really focusing on positive things that bring peace and joy. And so I don't necessarily have to focus on scripture to benefit from God's words. Like, God is in anything that exudes the fruit of his spirit. So if I'm going to listen to Wayne Dyer because Wayne Dyer is talking in such a way that is exuding the fruit of that spirit, well, then it must be God. You can't, that's another thing for the viewer. I just want to say this. I feel led to say this. I hope it's okay. But a lot of people are scared in the church. They demonize like breathwork or reprogramming the subconscious mind or whatever that's not found within the system that they're familiar with. Okay. Whatever's not familiar with them because of fear, they demonize it. And what I always tell people is like, God, the fruit of God's spirit cannot be copied. Like, if you want to go the path that the devil and darkness is real, which by the way I do believe, and I'll tell you that's a whole nother story. But the thing is like, the devil can't fake peace. He can't give peace. He can't give. And even as a person who helps people through inner healing and also helps people through coaching and reprogramming, you can't give what you don't have.
Yeah.
Right. So the proof is in the work and in the experience. So you can't demonize something that you haven't tried. And so, and if you're going to demonize something that by fruit itself, then you would probably demonize your church, because the truth is it's giving you a lot of anxiety sometimes, and it's giving a lot of chaos to a lot of people. It's causing sometimes more harm than good. Not always. There are some very great churches and great people out there who go to church, but there comes a point in time where sometimes the thing that was supposed to be loving you is hurting you more than it is loving you now. And so anyway, I don't know, went off on a tangent, but yeah, the new way is just a different perspective. And understanding the last one I will say is like, I don't really focus on doctrines anymore as far as like the way to salvation or heaven and hell. Like, when I was so confused and asking God to give me the truth, do people who don't know Jesus really go to hell, God? Like, do they really? Because gosh, like, I don't understand that, right? It was like God told me one day, finally, after years of searching and seeking, how about you focus on what you do know to be true? How about you focus? Like, there's thousands of near-death experiences that say, I went to heaven, or I didn't go to hell, or hell doesn't exist, or heaven does, or Jesus this, or not Jesus. And then there's countless religions that have their viewpoints. It's confusing. And I'm not going to deny that everybody's experience isn't real. Maybe it very much so was their experience, but it doesn't mean that it's absolute truth for the entire universe. So I came to a point where I was like, I'm going to settle in on the fact that what I heard in my spirit was to focus on what I know to be true. And what I know to be true is that I don't need to wait for people to die to know that they're living in hell here on earth, like in their mind. So if I'm going to save people from hell, I'm going to save them from hell here first.
Yeah.
Okay, let's start there. And I think after that, my greatest focus was like, what else is obvious, God? Like, and it was love. It was love. It was like, that's pretty obvious. Like, we're here to learn and grow, and we're here to love, and we're here to learn and grow in love. And one of my greatest missions in the world is to like, I have a nonprofit called Fierce Love Global. And it's like, I want to spread the fierce love of God all over the world. And I don't want to just do that in my speech. I want to do that through action. We help children in Africa get access to clean Africa and to get access in clean water and food and education and save them from horrible things. And so that's what I believe. So the new Jesus to me was the one that I've always felt to be true, which was he's a God of love, and he cares more about the fruit of our spirit. And even if you're not perfect, he understands where you're at in your healing journey. And I think he's with you in your truth and in your honesty and your heart posture more than he is with someone who wants to play the part, if that makes sense. So that's the new way. Hopefully, Kimberly Rich, I made that as clear as possible.
No, it resonates so much. I don't take it as coincidence at all that we're having this conversation, and I'm sure there will be so many follow-up conversations. But one of the things, so quick reflection on what you said just about like your relationship with Jesus. For me, what has always felt so resonant is I'm just like, Jesus is a homie. Like, he hung out with anyone. He didn't judge them. He was just there being like light, just being pure love and light. And so anything that wasn't that taught something that wasn't that made me feel like I was being judged by Jesus, I was like, nah, it doesn't land. Just like doesn't land.
Make sense.
And I've been a rebel my whole life, so it was easy for me to just be like, nah, doesn't check out. And so it's been this really interesting dance, like coming back to like, okay, what does check out? What does feel true? Where are the spiritual texts that support what I feel in my bones and in my heart, and that make me be a more gracious, more forgiving, more loving, but still boundaried and with standards kind of person. You know, it doesn't mean you're a pushover or you just allow abuse. Like, no, of course not. And then you said that you've moved away from doctrine, and that really resonated in terms of like the profitable coach, like what we teach here, because if there's any mentor, thought leader, teacher, trainer, whatever, that is saying this is the way and this is the only way, and if you don't do this, you're not going to succeed, run. They're trying to sell you something, whether it's a church, a teacher, whatever. Like, they're trying to sell you something. And so I really believe that there are so many paths to profit, whatever that means. And I also love that the word profit and the word profit are like, ooh, same but different. It's really interesting. I think this conversation, despite not being super like tactical necessarily, is so useful and will really land with a lot of people, because I think we have a lot of faith-based coaches in this community, and that has a lot of different flavors.
Absolutely. It's so good.
So with that, what are the things that you are currently studying or practicing to help yourself continue to be an embodiment of what it is you want to help people in?
So things that I practice regularly and have been for years, and there is an order in which I do things, in my method. And if people are interested in learning more about my coaching, they can reach out to me. You can put my information wherever. Perfect. But some things that I practice regularly, different forms of breath work. Okay, I do this for sure to help regulate my nervous system, but also to help me get into relaxed state when I go into my heartfelt gratitude affirmation prayers, whether it's journaling or whether it's, praying from my heart and visualizing. That is something that I do regularly. And then I'm always crafting up different meditations to help me achieve the different goals in my life, but I don't leave out the idea of peace out of anything that I do. Um, and so that's what I do. And then I'm continuously just healing and working and strengthening every aspect of my life, to be better. My connection to God and my ability to be a conduit is kind of a gift at this point. It's like at a flip of a switch, it can happen. So, but through that, listening to certain sounds and frequencies really helps me to tap into the atmospheres that I'm in. So
Say more
those
about
are the
that for
things,
people who don't know what that means.
like tapping into the atmosphere and frequency.
The frequencies, yeah.
In church, they do worship, right? And the idea is that like through this worship, like the presence of God can be felt. And I think that is true for a lot of places. I think that's why church can be confusing, because those are some of the most beautiful moments in church is during that part. It's like,
Totally.
I can't deny what I've experienced and what I feel here. And it's like, you feel Christ, you feel God, but it doesn't mean that he agrees with what's being taught, right? So, anyhow, but so I still practice that regularly in my life, but I don't just use worship sounds. Sometimes I use other sounds. Like one of my favorite sounds is like Interstellar. I love the Interstellar sounds.
What does
But I
that mean?
do that. Have you heard Hans Zimmer, the Interstellar soundtrack?
No. I mean, I've
You
seen
never
the
heard it?
movie, but I haven't
Yeah.
heard the soundtrack, or I haven't paid attention to the
It's the
soundtrack.
sound that's kind of going on in the movie, like do 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 do. Yeah, always. Anyway, I
Okay.
hope I don't get crap for that weird do do do. Anyway, but yeah, it's I listen to different sounds throughout my whole day. As a matter of fact, I'm very conscious of what I listen to. I don't really listen to things that are negative, that bring my frequency down, and such. I listen to things that are always uplifting or always allowing me to tap in, because with the sound, it actually helps you to be very aware of the atmosphere. And if you have an atmosphere, if you have a spiritual gift like I do, you're easily able to kind of discern the energy and the hearts and the emotions and the thoughts that are around you.
Yeah.
So it really helps me in my scope of work, as well. And so, yeah, that's what I do regularly. I exercise pretty regularly, but I'm not religious about it. And right now, besides doing that, I'm just always building up different offers and programs and trying to find out how I can continue to help humanity in a better way. So that's what I'm doing.
I love it. So you mentioned being really conscientious about not letting anything negative into your mind. And I think
Yeah.
this is something that is really overlooked.
Mm-hmm.
It's so mainstream, it's so normal to watch things that get you into a heightened state of emotion because we call it quote unquote entertainment. And yet a dysregulated nervous system, or feeding your mind with violence or adultery or sadness or anything like that, it's really impacting you on a subconscious level. And the difference that
Huge.
I notice in my life, in my dreams, in the stories that I make up about the people I actually do know, it's so different since
Yeah.
deciding that I don't let certain things into my mind. And I think
So
that a
good.
lot of people have shifted away from watching the news, and yet they're on social media where we are like, we are exposed to media. That is the new form
Yeah.
of media. So I say all this as an invitation for people to get like really ruthless as the gatekeepers of their mind and of their spirit.
So good. Yes. Oh yeah. Yeah, that's really true. Yeah. Kimberly, just to touch on that, music is one of the most powerful ways, and it could be used for both good and evil in our life.
Totally.
Because how easily hooks get into your head because of a sound that it was attached to. So I am with you on that.
Yeah. And I think that, again, an invitation for anyone listening to be really conscientious about like, what are the lyrics in the songs that you're listening to? And also, what are the frequencies of the songs that you're listening to? When you're watching a concert, and this is like a whole nother rabbit hole that we could go down, but when you're watching a concert of some of these really mainstream artists, look at the symbolism. What are the things that are being conveyed in the costumes, in the lights, in the production that's being performed? And it might be a little different than you think, like at surface level. So anyway, again, another rabbit hole.
That's huge. Yeah, for sure. There's so much there. And this was actually one of our first real like raw
Conversation.
conversations besides, and it's been so beautiful. Yeah.
I know. Okay, so to bring it home, Manny,
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
what are
Yeah.
some things that you wish that you had known when you first started your coaching business?
Like my business in general in life, like 15 years ago, or in how I coach people today, or what are you
Today.
referring
Well,
to?
both. Maybe, yeah. I mean, things that you had to learn over time that you're like, gosh, if only I'd known this, I could have
Okay.
shortcutted so many
Yeah.
things.
Okay. So I'll tell people this right now. Um, if I knew to value my inner world more than my external world, I would have saved hundreds of thousands of dollars lost and countless years of building and destroying and rebuilding and destroying. So if you're someone who's listening to this right now and you want to save a lot of money and time, value your inner world, become what you are trying to portray. If you're a service provider or give, truly embody that, but value who you are inside. Don't run away from it because you feel the pressures of life. Value your inner world above everything, because if it's failing inside, everything will eventually fail outside. It's
Yeah.
only a matter of time. So that's
Yeah.
one thing that I would say for sure. The other thing I would say is like the power of your subconscious mind, understanding how life really starts within the deep subconscious mind and how you feel and what you believe. Everything from there, all your decisions and the actions you take stem from that place. I have done more work on the power, I've tapped into the power of my subconscious mind more, and it's done more for me than any marketing and sales strategy than I've ever been able to implement in my life. So when it comes to, um, you know, building the outside stuff, I don't neglect or downplay the importance of having the right structures, strategies, and systems in play. These are huge. But I've seen how the power of the subconscious mind can totally change your life and your business, even without strong systems and things in place to begin. So
Yeah.
starting there inside for me has been the biggest two things. And I'd say the last thing is who you partner with and who you work with means it's everything to your success. Um, Working with the wrong people that don't align with who you are, that don't understand you, will totally be a distraction, will totally bring unnecessary negative emotions. And so partnering with the right people has the opposite effect. It really brings value to your life and joy to your life. So those are the three things. And of course, everything is centered around keeping your personal connection to God strong the whole way through. Because when your faith is weak, I think there is a component of God that is going to come and strengthen you. So
Mm,
that's what I've learned. Yeah.
I love that. What tips would you give for anyone who's like hungry to do some subconscious rewiring? What are some practices that have worked well for you?
One of the most powerful things that I teach is the power of like nighttime meditations.
Mm,
When you are in a relaxed state, and here's the thing, some people are not in a relaxed state even when they're sleeping, but
yeah,
but
so true.
when you are, yeah, this is why hypnotism works really well, because you're in a very deep relaxed state and then they speak to your subconscious mind. So when you listen to certain things at nighttime, it's going to really help reprogram you for whatever it is you're trying to achieve. And I would also say that to make sure that it's speaking as if it's in present time, because in your subconscious mind, it does not really genuinely know the difference between what is real, what is not, if that makes sense. And so if you're constantly projecting that one day I'm going to have a great life, you're constantly manifesting the idea that one day you will. But if you are speaking to your subconscious mind in such a way that says, I have a great life, you're manifesting that instead. So that's been a big part of what I teach, is the power of nighttime meditations.
I love it. That was a really beautiful note to end on. So, Manny,
Yeah.
tell everyone where they can go find you, and we'll make sure and have all of these things linked up in the show notes as well.
Okay, well, if you're trying to find me in person, I'm not going to give that information because I know I talked about some things here that may have bothered some people. I'm just kidding. If you got anything bad to say, you can email me at Kimberly Rich at the something prof. I don't know the email, Kimberly, but if it's bad, email Kimberly. If it's good, you can find me on Instagram. It's at Manny Borja Jr. And add me there. pretty much the only social media platform at the moment that I focus on. But that's a good start. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah. Go slide into Manny's DMs, get in his field,
Yeah.
soak up some of this good energy. And like I said, we'll have all of that linked up in the show notes. So thank you so much, Manny. I love this conversation. I can't wait to keep connecting more and seeing how we can support each other over the coming years.
Absolutely. And I just want to say thank you, Kimberly, for having me. It's been an honor and a privilege to be on here. And I love your energy. And I know you got even greater things ahead. So I'm excited to stay connected.
Thanks, Manny. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. Again, all the different books, resources, mentors that we mentioned in today's conversation, you can find over at profitablecoach.com/070. Big thank you to Manny. I loved the authenticity, the transparency, the heartfelt contribution to this conversation. And if you did too, then head over to theprofitablecoach.com/070. Get access to all of Manny's contact info. Go chat him up, go slide into those DMs, and really feel gratitude for getting to connect with such an incredible person and ask what it is that he has going on in his coaching world, because I guarantee you it is powerful. So with that, I appreciate you guys tuning in, and we will catch you on next week's episode.